then, you know, okay, so this is a great question. So I just saw a movie recently about Buddhism, and in it there was a saying, and the saying has really resonated with me. And the saying goes like this: a disciplined mind leads to happiness, an undisciplined mind leads to suffering. And to me, studying acting is a disciplined mind. You're happy when you're pursuing, growing, evolving, challenging yourself, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Life happens outside your comfort zone. These are the pillars of everything I teach. It's called improv and acting, but it's all really just life lessons.
This is Coop's Comedy Corner. Buckle up because it's funny as Coop's Comedy Corner.
Welcome to Coop's Comedy Corner. I'm your host, Steve Cooper. I want to give a shout out to Laurel Lanes, who's my sponsor. You know, Laurel Lanes is the ultimate entertainment center. They have 60 lanes of bowling. They have state-of-the-art arcade games. They have a private luxury suite. I mean, there's something for everybody. And it's great for corporate events, birthday parties, or a night out with friends. And they got an on-site restaurant, which I do a monthly event called Cocktails with Cooper, which is a networking event. And if you do your first networking event with them, they'll give 10% back of their sales to your charity of choice. And it's just got amazing food and great drinks. Killer happy hour, Monday through Friday, 4 to 7, $2.50 domestics, $4 wines, $5 mixed drinks, $5 appetizers. And it's really good bar food. And also they have fun events like karaoke, and they have trivia, and it's just a great place. And on the way out, if you're still hungry and you want something sweet, stop by their ice cream parlor called Lickety Splits. They have homemade concoctions. Can't say that word. Concoctions that are excellent. And even one with alcohol. It's called a butter pecan bourbon. So please go check out Laurel Lanes and Splits. Is on Route 73 in Maple Shade, and the website is laurellainesnj.com. Anyway, so we have a great guest. You know, this gentleman, he's been in a lot of TV shows and movies, and I met him in a fantastic, one of the best movies ever. We co-starred together in something called Killer Drag Queens on Dope, and we played Anthony and Tony. And to this day, I don't know which one I was, but my guest is Mark Beltzman. How you doing, Mark?
Aloha. I am well.
I got to ask you, how did you end up in Hawaii? You're a Midwest guy who lived in LA, and now you're living in Hawaii. What happened?
Oh, man, what happened? Good question. Whew. I spent, I've been an actor, I'm what you would call a career veteran character actor. And I spent 30 years in Los Angeles. And the business has changed. It's not as much fun as it used to be. And, with ultra low budget contracts, I used to make 10 grand for a job, and now I get paid $125 for the same thing. And it's, I'm not retired. I've just figured if I'm willing to work a few times a year, I can do it from anywhere. And I had founded Maui Improv in 2014, and I was coming back and forth for years, teaching and performing whenever I wanted to, which was great. And then my wife and I just got tired of LA, and we decided to move on. And this was a great opportunity because I had already had a community of folks here. And we moved here in October of 2019, right before lockdown. So we got to set up our nest, and then everything got shut down. And it was a magical, once in a lifetime experience nobody will ever have again, which was this island without tourists for 8 months during lockdown was one of the most magical things on earth. But anyways, that's how I got here. We just decided to move on, and this was, plan B. Actually, plan A was London, but I don't have a work visa for the UK. I visit and teach there often, and I perform there often, but in order to be employed in any regular gig or work as an actor on a movie or TV show, you have to have a visa. And I don't have one, so this was plan B, and I love it. It's great.
How have you acclimated? Because like when I left LA and moved back to New Jersey, it took a while to acclimate because you're just used to traffic. And even New Jersey, we have traffic, but it's nothing like LA traffic.
Yeah.
And you have to get used to in LA when you go to a bar or a restaurant and you see someone who looks like an actor, it probably is them. But when you come back to New Jersey, you go, hey man, that guy looks like such and such, and you go, oh no, that's just some plumber. It's not the same thing. But how did you acclimate leaving LA and going to Hawaii? Because a lot of people I know say, and I happen to be, you have to decompress for a few months because, I mean, LA people don't get, it's always, you never know what time you're going to get somewhere because it could be 30 minutes or it could be an hour and a half for traffic. But how did you acclimate when you got to Hawaii?
Well, that's a long answer to, I mean, this culture here is much different than living anywhere else. So it's actually a double-edged sword. Acclimating anywhere on the mainland like you did is completely different than moving to a small island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. The culture here is different. The pros far outweigh the cons, but people come and go here. People live here for a year or 2 years or 4 or 5 years, and then they leave. So people don't let you into their circles at all here until you've been here for 5 or more years. So it's very challenging on many levels. But what happened was during the pandemic, we were on lockdown here in Maui as well, and you couldn't be in a park. You couldn't be on the beach. You'd get a ticket or get arrested. But there's no maritime law. So as long as you were in the water, the cops left you alone. So I started swimming 7 days a week just to get the fuck out of the apartment. And I still do it. 5 years now. I swim every day, 7 days a week, every morning. It's how I start my day. I never thought at 64 years old I would look forward to exercising. And I spent an hour and a half in the ocean today, diving in the reef and, swimming with octopus and lobsters and starfish and turtles everywhere. And as you can see the picture behind me, I swim with that dude every day. And so it's a completely different culture here, and acclimating is very challenging on so many levels. But I've managed to find my footing and find my way. I travel a lot. I spent a couple months in Europe last year teaching and performing in London for a few weeks. I spent a month in Italy teaching in Milan, and an international improv festival in Rome I was invited to, Tuscany, Padua, just outside of Venice. So I travel a lot for teaching and performing, and I play in the orchestra. I play tuba. I've played tuba since I was a kid since I was in 4th grade. So I've managed to get hired by the Maui Pops Orchestra. I had a great concert on Sunday at the MAC, which is the Maui Arts and Cultural Center. It's the biggest venue on Maui. And I play in the Maui Community Band. So I play a lot of music, and, I audition and work on stuff in Oahu. I was on Magnum PI. I was on NCIS Hawaii. I did a movie with Zach Galifianakis, the live action version of Lilo and Stitch. I have one line and a small scene, but that hasn't come out yet. So I still work, and, like I said, I'm finding my footing, and acclimating is a loaded question here as compared to on the mainland. It's just a completely different world and a different culture. But like I said, the pros far outweigh the cons. And I don't think I'll spend the rest of my life on Maui, but I'm definitely in no hurry to go anywhere. I'll tell you that. It's a great life.
It's funny. I was going to ask you before you brought it up about the tuba, because I remember you used to do a show in LA, and I forget, it was like called Tubathon or Tuba Fest, or I still remember because I've seen it on Facebook, and this was after Tuba Bazaar. Tell me about that, because I remember it was cool. I mean, it was, where did you do it?
Yeah, Tubazar was a really magical show I did for years, well over a decade in Los Angeles. And the whole idea is it's Tubaczar, Tubazar, and I am the czar of the tuba. And I invite other artists to come play their music. They just have to write me a tuba part to play along with them. And so I would get like 5, 6 artists for each show. And Lawrence Juber, who was Paul McCartney's guitarist in the Wings, would come do my show all the time. Marcy Levy, who wrote Lay Down Sally for Eric Clapton, would do. I'm still impressed with the people I got to come. The great Harry Dean Stanton came and did my show, and great folk musicians from Los Angeles, Gary Stockdale, Cynthia Carroll, Amy Englehart, these brilliant songwriters, and they would all come do my shows, and we would form a band for the night. And it was really a fun night of just really playing some magical music with some amazing people. And this is something I've done my whole life and my whole career, is I surround myself with people who are 10 times more talented than I am, and I try and keep up with them. And as I always say in my classes, life happens outside your comfort zone. So I practice what I preach, and it's important for me to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So I am constantly putting myself in uncomfortable situations to rise up and meet the occasion. And I really enjoy that in life.
Now, how did you get involved? I know you ended up in Chicago, but you're from Michigan originally, right?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. And like I said, I played tuba, and then I did a lot of commercial work in Detroit, and a lot of TV commercials. It all started because my best friend Robert Teachman worked for one of the biggest photographers in Detroit named Amin Harani. And Amin was responsible for my career. He gave me my first TV commercial, which was a still shoot. It was just photos of a guy played Tony Baker, the high-low driver who drove his forklift into 400 refrigerators. And it was in all the, newspapers and ads and TV and stuff. And that was my first real big break. Before that, I had done another photographer named Charlie Schritty asked, could he borrow my tuba for a magazine chair ad? And I said, sure. And he said, you want to be in it? And so the first thing I did was a magazine chair ad for Lazy Boy chairs. And then that TV commercial. And then I just, I was playing in 3 symphonies after college. The St. Clair Shores Symphony, the Scandinavian Symphony, and the Allen Park Symphony in suburbs of Detroit. And then I just dropped music for acting, and I really pursued it and moved to Chicago, where I was a founding member of what's called IO, Improv Olympic. And then I got hired at Second City and worked there from 1985 to 1991. And then I got swept off my feet by managers and agents who convinced me to move to Los Angeles and represented me. And I spent 30 years doing movies and television in Los Angeles. Yeah.
Tell me more about the founding member of IO, because I know IO because I used to do comedy with Adam McKay, who Adam ended up at IO.
Sure, yeah, he was after me. Mm-hmm.
So good. I was going to say, how does one become a founding member? Like, was it you and a few guys' ideas, or how? Because it's IO's Del Close, and everyone knows. But what happened?
Yeah, Del was the guru. Del was the guru of all improv, man. He was my mentor. He was my friend. He was my neighbor. I drove him back and forth to class all the time. But the way that started was Sharna Halpern was the founder. She actually was part of what Improv Olympic originally started and what morphed and became theater sports. And that was started by a guy named David Shepard, who's legend in the improv world. And David Shepard started Improv Olympic, which became theater sports. And Sharna Halpern was a part of that. And Sharna hired Del to teach classes, and she took the name Improv Olympic, and she created the theater that Del was, the guru to all of us. And she organized the classes and did all that. And then when I started studying with Del, she formed the first long-form improv group. Now, long-form improvisation has always been done as part of short-form improv or other groups. It was started by the committee in the late 60s in San Francisco. And Del was the director of the committee. And so Sharna took the name Improv Olympic and started the very first group to ever perform long-form improvisation as a show in and of itself. In other words, it wasn't part of another improv show or games or short form. People would actually pay money to come in and see a Herald, which was a 45 to an hour long structure that Del was teaching us. and she formed a group called Barracudas, and that was named after a character that Dell voiced in Diver Dan called Barron's Barracuda. So we took that name and we formed the group Barron's Barracudas, and we were the very first group in Improv Olympic. And so then she started getting other long form groups. The Improv Institute was another theater in Chicago. They also had a long form improv group, and she started a competition. So we would compete, the groups would compete against each other, and the audience would vote on different categories like teamwork. Did you use the theme, structure? All of that stuff was voted on by the audience. And of course, for the most part, Barron's Barracudas was kind of like, we would always win because it was an amazing group of people. We were just really excited about the art form, about, passionately pursuing improv. None of us got paid to do this back in those days. Improv now is a worldwide enterprise. I can go anywhere in the world and teach a weekend seminar in improvisation and acting. But back then it was just an art form and a passion, like being a painter. You just did it because we did it 7 days a week. It was the most fun I ever had in Chicago back in from 1985 to let's say 88. And then I got hired at Second City, and I was in Second City Northwest, and then Second City ETC, and then Farley, who was originally hired as my understudy. Actually, Dell put him on main stage. Farley went to SNL. I replaced Farley on main stage, and then I just moved out to LA to pursue, movies and television.
What was it like? Well, first of all, who was in the Barracudas, Barron's Barracuda? Who was in that group?
Joel Murray, David Pasquesi, Chris Barnes, J.J. Jones, myself, Howard Johnson, who's a great biographer of all this work. He did a book about Dell. He also did a bunch of books about Monty Python. He's the biographer for Monty Python as well. And Honor Finnegan was one of the girls. And let's see, that's 8 or 9. There was like 11 of us. So I'm missing a couple people. I can't quite remember all of them. Jack Wells was a guy, and Larry something. Those were the people.
Well, why did you decide to go to Second City then? Because was that like upgrading, or was your time, had you been at Improv Olympic long enough? I mean, what made you shift?
Well, Second City was the carrot everybody was chasing back in those days, for sure. That was the launching pad, actually shaped comedy as we know it today. That's, Del Close, Harold Ramis, John Belushi, Bill Murray, John Candy. Those are all my idols and heroes, and I got to work with most of them. I think almost all of them, except for maybe John Belushi died before I got there. But, that was like the standard, and those people shaped comedy as we know it today, especially people like Dell, who taught everybody, and Harold Ramis, who directed all these brilliant movies with all those brilliant actors. And so I was in a group called the Detroit Times Theater Company. That's where I met my wife, Beverly. We've been together 42 years now. And I love her to death. She's a great lady. And so I met her there. And then I moved to Chicago to start taking classes with a guy named Michael Gelman, who's also one of my heroes, mentors, and former directors. As a matter of fact, Michael Gelman and I performed together for the very first time ever that I can remember in Rome last year. He and I were both teaching workshops at the Welcome Festival in Rome in 2024 in May. And so Michael and I got to close the entire week-long festival with a show that we put together and included the rest of the cast. And so Michael called me one day. I had taken a class with him in Detroit because Jonathan Round, who was the director of Detroit Times Theater Company, brought him to Detroit to teach a workshop for the Detroit Times Theater Company. And Michael and I became friends. And Michael called me one day shortly after that, and he said, "Hey, what are you still doing in Detroit? You're going to fucking die there." And he goes, "Come to Chicago. You belong in Chicago," because, he was very encouraging and recognized my talent. And so I did. I moved to Chicago and I started taking classes with Michael Gelman. And then Michael Gelman got me into Del Close's classes. And then the rest is history. I just, put my nose to the grindstone and studied with those two guys at the beginning of my career. And I'm still studying to this day,
How important is studying? Because so many people don't. Like, people sit there and think, oh, a lot of actors still take acting classes. But for you, and since you're a teacher too, how important is it? I mean, is it something that I'm someone, I believe, like, I've done this show, you were on Cooper Talk. I've done 1,030 episodes. I do a business podcast, which is a roundtable. But I always learn as an interviewer. I'm never going to sit there and go, and you can learn whenever you do something. For you, how important is it? Like, if someone, a young guy who wants to do improv or acting, how important is it to constantly take classes? Because, as you said, you still study. You can always learn something.
Well, we're all students. We're all teachers, right? Even though I teach, I learn more from my students than they'll ever learn from me, because I'm constantly reminding myself what I need to do. And as students, we're teachers because we learn from what we do right and it feels good. And we also learn from what we do wrong and what not to do. But for me, studying acting, improvisation, music, any art form is no different than going to the gym. You got to exercise. Having a gym membership is, if you don't lift weights, no matter what level you're at, even if it's 1 pound weights, let alone, 100 or 500 pound bench pressing, you get atrophy, right? Your muscles get atrophy, and your muscles, you need to exercise. My good friend Michael McCarthy, may he rest in peace, used to say his grandfather had a saying: "Your liver is a muscle, and you've got to exercise it." Meaning drinking is exercising your muscle, right? And so everything in your body is a muscle, especially your brain, and your mental health is a muscle. You got to exercise your mental health. If you don't, then, Okay, so this is a great question. So I just saw a movie recently about Buddhism, and in it there was a saying, and the saying has really resonated with me. And the saying goes like this: a disciplined mind leads to happiness. An undisciplined mind leads to suffering. And to me, studying acting is a disciplined mind. You're happy when you're pursuing, growing, evolving, challenging yourself, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. Life happens outside your comfort zone. These are the pillars of everything I teach. It's called improv and acting, but it's all really just life lessons. Make your partner look good. You look twice as good. Be in the moment. Be honest, truthful, and real. Figure out what's working and do more of it instead of trying to change and fix what's wrong. How do you know the difference? One makes you smile and one doesn't. We're all born with an internal mechanism that tells us what's working in our lives. So just figure out what makes you smile and do more of it instead of worrying about shit and trying to change and fix things so your future's better. It doesn't work. It just does not work. And I don't care what it is that makes you smile. If it's watching porn, smoking weed, drinking, gardening, swimming, exercising, riding a bike, painting, playing music, whatever makes you smile, do more of it. And the rest of your life will fix itself when you realize you didn't need to worry about it in the first place. And that's the pillar of everything that I teach, everything I believe in, and why I believe you should continually study everything that makes you happy in life. Pursue the art of happiness means you're feeding your creativity, your mental health, and that in turn leads to all the other boxes being checked, right? You have to check the box of mental health, creative health, physical health, and financial health. And if you can check all those boxes, you're living a great life.
Well, you've you lived a great life with your career. I wanted, you said you moved when you got wooed to come to LA. What was it like when you first moved to LA, and how long was it till you got up and running? Because I know you were a Mo Money pretty quick, right? Was that one of your first gigs?
What was? What was that?
Was it Mo Money one of your first gigs?
Mo Money I did before I left Chicago. In Chicago, I was very fortunate. I got to do some really powerful stuff. I did, let's see, Home Alone. Well, I was in Uncle Buck. I got cut out of that. Curly Sue, I ended up on the editing room floor. Home Alone, I was in, but I didn't have any lines. And then Mo Money was a big movie I did. And then after that, I moved out to Hollywood. And, I was just like every other cardboard cutout actor pursuing a career. You're insecure. You're chasing the carrot. You're chasing money. You're trying to survive. You're trying to pay your rent, scraping together whatever you can. But I've been so fortunate. Like you said, I'm so grateful. I've never had to have a real job in my entire life since I was a kid. I've always managed to piece it together through movies and television, primarily, teaching, playing music, and commercials. It's just, I've been really fortunate, but it was really tough. I moved there in 1985, and I don't know what to say about it. It was just, back then we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have computers. You spent your days driving around.
Pager.
That was even later. That was even 10, 12, 15 years later, too. There was no pagers in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. We spent most of our time, I would have probably, if I was lucky, 3 to 5, maybe even 7 auditions a week. And you'd spent your days driving from casting director's office to casting director's office, picking up your sides. The audition piece is called your sides. And so you'd get your script, and you, most of the time, you didn't get to read the whole script. You only had the page or 3 or 4 pages that you had to audition with. And then you'd pick up and you'd go home and study, and then you'd have to come back for your audition time to actually be put on tape for the producers and the director. And so most of the time was just spent in your car, driving for hours and hours from one side of town to the other side of town, finding the casting director's offices, using Thomas guides. Remember, we didn't have Google Maps.
Oh, yeah.
We had a big, thick book. It was about this big. It was a triangle, and you have to
one grid.
And you would go.
It had one grid.
And you go like this, and then you'd have to figure out your route and how you're going to get there. And you didn't want to take the freeways because you were afraid of them back then. You were like, I got to figure out the side streets and how to stay out of the. So yeah, that was how most of your days were spent as a young actor in Hollywood when I first moved there.
Now, do you remember how did Seinfeld come about? Because when we did Killer Drag Queens on Dope, people were like, "Who's the guy you with?" I said, "Do you remember Seinfeld and Billy Madison?" Which I want to talk about too. But
yeah,
Seinfeld. I remember everyone. See, the funny thing is, people who watch Seinfeld are still religiously watching it. Like if me and my wife are watching TV and Seinfeld comes on, we stop and watch it because it still makes us laugh. We've seen the episode 87 times. But how did Seinfeld come about? And do you still get recognized? Do you get recognized for that?
No, I have a really great career because there's nobody who hasn't seen me in something, but nobody knows who I am unless I tell them, which is fine. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, right? If I was really recognizable, I'd have a lot more money, but I'm not, and I have a great life and no regrets. Seinfeld, the casting director's name was Mark Hirschfeld. And Mark Hirschfeld was a big fan of mine and all the Second City folks. And he would regularly bring us in for just about anything and everything. And Mark brought me in to read for that show. And they really liked me, but I wasn't right for that part. So that summer, I guess it was about, I'd say a good 4 to 6 months that Mark brought me in for probably, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 different roles for Seinfeld. And finally, they said yes. And I got to, it was actually, I know exactly when it was because it was the Northridge earthquake hit. I got hired by by Seinfeld, and I had one day, which is a table read. They call them a table. You sit down and just read the script. And the next day was the Northridge earthquake. That night, I think it was. So we didn't go back to work for, a while because of all the damage to the studios. But after a month or so, we went back and picked right up and shot that episode. And because they were so far behind, the episode I did was on like the next week or 10 days later. Because of the earthquake, they were behind schedule. But yeah, that's how it came about. It was really fun shooting too.
Billy?
Those guys were really great. I was a big fan anyways. And so grateful for the opportunity to be on the show. But as soon as I showed up for the table read, Michael Richards walks up to me and he's like, "Hey, I know you. You do improv. You do comedy. You and I do the same thing." And I'm like, my jaw's on the floor, and I'm like, I should be saying this to you. And they were all really sweet and very welcoming. And I discovered really quickly that Larry David was God on set, right? Everybody would like, should I do that? Should the wardrobe purpose? Should I wear this? And they go, well, and they tell the AD, and the AD would go tell the wardrobe person. The wardrobe person would go ask Larry, is this okay? And so finally, I just started walking up to Larry, and I'm like, Larry, is this good for you? And he's like, yeah. I was like, cut to the chase. And so I became, a little more friendly and, yeah.
And now Billy Madison, you were, it's funny because that movie, once again, you're in these shows and movies that are cult classics. I'm Wedding Singer, they're cult classics, and they're still out there, and still people not only our age watch them, but younger kids watch them. So Billy, was Billy Madison before or after Seinfeld?
After, I think, yeah, they were about the same time, 95, somewhere around 95, both of them happened. But Billy Madison, okay, I auditioned for Billy Madison, and I left the country. I went to Kilkenny, Ireland, to perform at a theater festival with my said mentioned friend Michael McCarthy, may he rest in peace. He and I went to perform improv at a theater festival in Kilkenny, Ireland, and I got the call from my agent, who tracked me down somehow and said, hey, they booked you on Billy Madison. And I found out later Adam Sandler wanted his friend Jack Garaputo. Was it Jack? No. Alan Covert. Alan Covert it was a friend of Sandler's, and he wanted Alan to have my role. But the Universal Studios made Sandler hire me because Sandler didn't have as much power back then. And so I got to, I had to fly from Ireland to Toronto to go shoot Billy Madison. Yeah.
So what were those shoots like? Because it was you, him, and Norm, right?
God bless Norm Macdonald. Oh man, yeah, genius. They were genius. I mean, like I said, I'm so fortunate. Me and Norm played Adam's buddies, and they were great to work with. There's some great stories and a lot of fun. And Norm was just, batshit crazy, but one of the most talented, genius comedic actors and stand-up comedians I ever met. Really funny, really neurotic, total hypochondriac, but just a genius. And Sandler, Sandler was running the show. He didn't have quite as much power as he does now, but he was really sweet, man, sweet to me. And the first director got fired within 8 days, and then they brought in another director. The second director was Tamra Davis, who's married to one of the Beastie Boys. And she directed it, but she would always defer to Sandler. And so Sandler was ultimately the director, but she got the credit, and they worked together and put together a really good film. It was great. There was a lot more footage of me and some other stuff and some really funny stuff that they edited out because Sandler was the star of the show. It was his story. It was his script. And I guess that's the way he wanted it. So that's how it got edited. But it was great. I'm so, like I said, so fortunate to have such a great pedigree and resume.
Now, when that happens, like you said, you got cut out of Uncle Buck, you got cut out of this, you got cut out of that, and your scenes get cut out. How does an act, as a young actor, how did you take that? It's probably changed now because it's part of the game. But when you sit there and you're delivering some killer lines with Adam, and all of a sudden it gets taken out, as a young actor, does it fuck with your head? Like you sit there and go, oh man, I thought I was right on the mark, but maybe I'm not. I mean, how does a young, because this was years ago, how does a younger actor deal with that?
Well, I mean, it's sort of, you kind of take it personal on some level with some of the stuff getting cut out of movies like Uncle Buck and Curly, which is just really fun to do. Great scenes, great work, great writing, and it just doesn't make the cut for whatever reason. But what you learn early on in this industry, if you work enough, if you're fortunate to work enough, is you have no control over anything but yourself. You just show up and do the best job you can. And I've seen shows for decades where I go, oh, if I knew they were going to edit it that way, I would have played it differently or put a different speed, or take, or put the emphasis here if I knew it was going to be edited that way. So you have no control over that. But yeah, I mean, early on, and even now, I guess sometimes you can take it personally, but I've learned to not take any of this stuff personally, man, because it's so easy to go down a rabbit hole of. There's look at it this way. There's no such thing as making it or having it all. If you're fortunate enough to be making $1 million a movie, there's somebody who's making 5. And so you want to get that. And then you start making $5 million a movie, and there's somebody making 8. And then there's somebody making 12 and somebody making 20. And there's no such thing as making it. You always want to evolve, and you always want to get a higher ranking or a higher credit. You want to be above title. But as character actor, we never pursued those things. Somebody told me really early on in my career when I first moved to LA, Second City, Second Banana. Meaning you're a character actor. You're never gonna be the lead. You're always gonna be the guy who makes everybody else look good, which is the basis of being an ensemble improv actor and trained in ensemble improvisation. Because our job at Second City is to make your partner look good and you look twice as good. So that was the basis of my training from the beginning of my career. And that's what I've always done. That's what I've always pursued, is opportunities to make other people look good, which hopefully in turn makes, me look twice as good.
Now, you also ended up in The Wedding Singer. Did Adam call you for that part, or how did that happen? Did you have to audition, or did you know him? Like, because it seems like a lot of comedians are like that. They look out for the people, and I want to talk to you about that, about the whole Chicago guys, because you guys are so close on Facebook and everything, the whole group. But did Adam say, I want you in this part, or how did that end up playing the Flock of Seagulls guy?
Well, Adam promised me a part in Happy Gilmore, and my part got written out before they even started filming. And when they did The Wedding Singer, was just Adam tossing me a bone and asked me, did I want to do that part? And I said, sure. That was very, very generous of him.
Now, I want to ask you about one of your most best movies you were in. It was a beautiful little ensemble piece called Killer Drag Queens on Dope. I don't know if you remember that movie, but it was directed by the wonderful Laz Sarek. I don't know if you remember it. That's where I met you.
Laz is a good dude, man. Yeah, Laz wrote script, and he worked for one of my best friends, was named Frank Barron. And Frank is no longer with us. May he rest.
Frank was friends with Clark Weaver. Frank was good friends with my friend Clark Weaver. I remember Frank. We used to go to Clark Weaver's parties. He had a beard. He was gray. He was like 35. He was already gray, and he had a beard.
Frank, I'm still really good friends with his widow, Susan Barron. Frank was one of the funniest dudes I ever met. And he and I were just really good buddies. And so Laz worked in the same office Frank did. And that's how I met Laz, and he asked me to do this movie, and It was with Alexis Arquette, who played the killer drag queen on Dope, I think, and me and you. And yeah, it was fun. It was fun meeting you. It was fun working with you. I didn't exactly have great fond memories of that shoot, but so be it.
You know what's funny about that shoot? It was like digital was first coming out, and they blew smoke on us in every fucking scene. Like because and it was like so like, but it was digital back then. Now it's like digital everything. But it was just funny because every day here comes smoke, and you're like, Jesus Christ, it's awful.
Yeah, it wasn't a big budget movie. Let's just put it that way. And we did the best we could. And I was happy to be asked, and I was happy to support the arts and support a friend. And I don't think it really ever saw the light of day. I think it's a credit on IMDb, but I've never seen the movie.
Now, I want to ask you, the Chicago guys, why are it always seems like they're Pat Finn and Pete Holm and all you Chicago guys, like when you see, it's so funny when you see the Cubs play the Dodgers, it's like everyone shows up, Tom Dreesen shows up, like all these Chicago guys. Why do you think you have such a bond? I mean, was it just because you've been in the business for this long and you're still working, or because you come from Chicago? What is that bond? Because it fascinates me, because all of you guys are still, like, if you probably saw someone who you didn't see for 20 years, you probably just start up right just talking to them.
Well, I will answer that question, but what this really brings up for me, my heart, it goes out to all the people in LA right now. All those people are in LA, and they're really, really suffering, and it's really tragic. And I'm really, really brokenhearted. And every one of my friends is either evacuated or lost everything, and it's really crazy and sad. And it's kind of PTSD for me, because we went through this in Lahaina a year and a half ago. It's really heartbreaking. But to answer your question, to me, Second City is like going to comedy clown college, Ringling Brothers comedy in Florida. It's like going to college, right? That's where you learn on your feet in front of an audience, and you get the education of a lifetime. And you're doing 8 shows a week, and you're performing, and you're learning, and you get more stage time and theater time and writing your own sketches. So you get to learn comedy, you get to learn sketch writing, you get to learn performing, you get to learn comedy timing, what works and what doesn't. When you're in the touring company, you get the privilege of doing scenes that have been written by all the actors who worked at Second City before you. So when I was in the touring company, we would do scenes written by John Belushi and Bill Murray and John Candy, and the scenes they wrote taught you how to make a comedic line work, or find out why it doesn't work. And so the point is this: it's like going to college, and it's like being in a fraternity. There are very few people essentially that have ever been hired at Second City. If you look at the list, it's a few hundred long, but Second City is 50 years old. So it's a very exclusive fraternity. And when you're in a fraternity of any kind, you support that college and their sports teams and funding, and do everything you can for them from the moment you join to the moment you die and retire. And so we're always in that fraternity. And that fraternity of people happens to be celebrities and working actors. And we all support each other the same way you would support any fraternity that you were a part of when you went to college and grew up and learned your craft. And so we all support each other.
What was it like being in the touring company? When you say, now, are you doing gigs? Like, are you doing theaters, or are you doing, like small gigs, big gigs? I mean, did they just send you out on the road, and whatever they booked, you'd go? I mean, I always wonder, because when I did comedy, I remember one thing I remembered was I was playing at a casino comedy club in Atlantic City, and I got to stay in this cool room, and I was there for a week. And then the next week I'm in Erie, Pennsylvania, and I'm sleeping in a converted trailer park, and I'm playing a place. I remember it was called the Split Rook Club, and it was a rock club. So you're on stage, and there's like a down where the floor is, and then there's people, and it was awful, like the worst acoustics. Like you had to scream. So it was, and then you look down. So that's what it was like. That. What was it like for improv? Because you had the Second City name connected to it, but what was it like when you were?
We were working for, the king of comedy at Second City, especially back in those days. And they had booking agents. So we only played mostly colleges, or big, huge theaters. There's a few gigs that I had that could be equivalent to describing what you just, the story you just told, but I can count those on one hand. Everywhere we went, it was mostly college campuses, and we'd play these huge, like the Frank Lloyd Wright Auditorium, and Colorado. There was the Tommy Dorsey or something auditorium in Colorado College in Boulder, University of Colorado in Boulder. They were amazing venues. That all professional venues where all kinds of rock, big rock stars and big name acts would play. So we played all of those places. I remember. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. What you remember? What?
I was just going to say, I remember playing the Wheeler Opera House in Aspen, Colorado, a few different times, and that was, in Aspen, you're way up in the mountains, and you're huffing and puffing, just running on stage. And Second City show, you're making probably 30 costume changes in the show, and constantly running either backstage to change your costume or running back on stage to hit your mark and make your entrance. And in places like Aspen, we had to have oxygen tanks backstage. So when you went backstage, you'd catch your breath so you could go out and deliver your line without huffing and puffing and looking like you were about to, die of a heart attack. God forbid.
Now, I want to ask you, because you said you're playing in these big places.
Yeah.
And you have the Second City name.
Mm-hmm.
As a performer, do you think you gain from that because you're going to go in, it's going to be a big crowd, you already have that somewhat advantage because people are coming to see Second City. So as a performer, do you think that makes you stronger when you do that, or do you think it just makes it comes easier, and then when you play a smaller gig it would change?
No, I think, you just work that muscle, right? You got to know your audience and know your crowd and know the venue, and, how much to project, whether you're mic'd. A lot of those places we had body mics, a lot of those places we didn't. And you want to make sure that your voice hit the back row. And then, like you said, there's a lot of smaller venues that we would play, little dinner theaters or comedy clubs. We played a lot of those too. And so you just adjust, and when you're in the touring company, you're adjusting for every show you go to. You gotta, you get there early and you do sound check and lighting check, and then you figure out how big the stage is, where you're going to set your props, where you got to get to, this side of the stage, and then you go over your running order and figure out whether you're exiting stage right or stage left, maybe both. With this one in 10 minutes later, you're exiting this way, and you have to have everything arranged. So you just learn the layout of what your routine is, and then you lay out your routine in cooperation and collaboration with everybody else's routine, so that you're not, running into each other on stage, which happened sometimes as well.
So you've had this very long, successful career. You never had to work, as you said, never had to work another job. Give me some, when you look back at your career, give me some highlights, what you consider your highlights of your career. A few things that you just sit there, you go, holy shit, or you just go, wow, that's cool. Like, I mean, because you've worked with everybody, you've been in so many TV shows, but what are some of those things that just stick out to you? Because I think once you start, when you have a lot of credits, they all sort of blend together, but there's got to be some things that just stick out to you.
Well, I mean, we can work backwards. Last year was one of the most amazing years of my life. Spending a month in Italy teaching weekend seminars every weekend was really exciting. Billy Madison was great. And if anybody ever asked me who my favorite actor was, it's always hands down John Candy. He was just such a generous, and he was a hero of mine. And I met him at Second City. Then I got to work with him on Uncle Buck. We had 3 days of shooting, and that all got ended up on the editing room floor. And he was just such a gem. And then I got to do Home Alone with him, and some great stories around that. His daughter does a show called Couch Candy. You can still find on YouTube, and she interviews people who worked with her father. And that's really fun. So you can go to, Couch Candy, Mark Beltzman, and it's a great episode that, kind of highlights my career. Seinfeld's definitely. Curb Your Enthusiasm was a highlight for sure. Yeah, and, some little independent things, a lot of commercial work. Of course, playing tuba has been, a staple. Music has been a real foundation of my life. Between playing tuba and sorry, there's some crazy traffic going on. If you can hear the noise, can you hear that? No,
I can hear it, but sorry, I can hear you. It's good.
There. So there's been a lot of really fun things, music, and that's all I can think of right now. A lot of great people in my life, a lot of great people who've supported me, and a lot of mentors and a lot of colleagues. Richard Kind, I still talk to and love. And George Wendt has been a really great friend and colleague, and I worked with him a few times. He and I did a musical together for years called Reanimator the Musical. And that was really a lot of fun. We went to Broadway to do the New York Music Festival, and then we all flew to Edinburgh and did the Fringe Festival in Scotland for a month in 2012. Those are some highlights.
Has there been any time in your career that you sat there, and you're on a dry spell and you think, what am I doing? I'm going to walk away. Has that ever happened? Because I know, as you said, you haven't worked a regular job. Have you gone through that ever?
Well, I'll tell you, I always thought I'd be $1 million movie star, and it still hasn't happened. I still believe my best work is ahead of me. I'm not retired, and I love nothing. I love more than being on a movie set or a TV set and working as an actor in front of the camera. But I'll tell you a story. In 2012, I was doing that musical, and my wife and I had been living in the same apartment for 21 years in Los Angeles, and we were getting complacent and kind of just bored and wanted to move on. And I didn't know if my career was ever going to really take off the way I had anticipated it would for decades. And I finally realized doing a lot of internal work on myself and figuring out what makes me tick and what doesn't, and where I'm being stopped and overcoming my shortcomings. My wife and I decided to sell everything we own in Los Angeles. We sold our cars, our clothes, our furniture. We put some stuff in a friend's garage. And she met me at the end of the run in Edinburgh in August of 2012. And then she calls it our walkabout. We just kind of fucked off for 14 months. After the festival, the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, we spent a month in Scotland touring around and me getting some rest from just performing every night. Then we went to Amsterdam, and then I rented a house in England, in London. And I taught and performed all over England for about 6 months. And it was one of the most exciting years of our life. We went from there to New York, spent a few months there teaching and performing, and then taught my way across the country back to LA, where we found another apartment. But from 2012 to 2013, late 2013, we were literally on the road. I was literally homeless, and it was one of the most exciting years of our lives. And I taught everywhere I went, and living in England was great. I was making a fortune teaching, but we had to I had a drawer that was literally like a cash machine. And we don't have anything to show for it because the cost of living in London is really expensive. It was like 2 or 3 times as much as living in New York. But we had a great time and really enjoyed that year of just kind of, fucking off and living like a homeless person out of our suitcase for 14 months before we got back to our place in LA. And that was a really exciting time. I love
Now, how much do you think the industry's changed? You said besides the pay, you said earlier, and I've heard that where, when you were a guest, the people who used to be guest stars are now people who had a TV series before because movie stars are coming down to TV. So it's a cycling down. So the person who would be the guest star is now like fourth on the sheet or fifth on the sheet.
Yeah.
Besides that and the money, how has LA and the entertainment industry changed in your eyes? Someone who's been a veteran for a very long time.
Well, it changed dramatically. I mean, back in the heyday, movie actors didn't do TV, and TV, and so because there was that was the system. Then there was a lot of work for us character actors doing TV commercials, voiceovers, smaller parts in TV shows and movies, and then the industry sort of morphed into everybody did everything. And so the A-list actors were doing all the voiceovers in TV commercial, and that made less work for us as character actors. And if you weren't really famous or in the $1 Million Club or didn't have that kind of representation or management, then you were kind of like, swept either under the carpet, or if there was an opportunity for somebody in they were casting a big part in a movie and you kind of fit the little role at the bottom, then you got that. But then what happened is diversity kicked in, right? And so even if you had a really high pedigree and resume, they needed to hire an ethnic person, an African-American person, an Asian person, a gay person, a woman. There was cross-gender casting because they were looking at diversity. So the more diversity rose up, the less opportunities for us as character actors would happen. They don't hire short, fat, white, bald guys anymore. They'll give the part to, an ethnic background person or, somebody of a different ethnicity. And so and then ultra low budget contracts came in. And that kind of happened because the commercial strike in 1997, we kind of lost everything and never recovered. The producers and the studios all hired guns, hired big guns to be lawyers and strike negotiators and do all the negotiating. And actors thought they could do it all themselves, and they blew it. And they gave away everything, and we never recovered. The producers now get everything. We don't have quotes. I used to have a quote. Like if you wanted to hire me, you had to pay me $5,000 or $10,000 to do anything. Now, because of ultra low budget contracts, I get paid $125 to do the same job I did when I was getting paid $5,000 or $10,000. Then they only hire you for a half a day instead of a day because they don't want to pay you for the whole day in a SAG wage. And then it trickles down, right? It just keeps trickling down to get less and less work. Then they make the insurance premiums higher. So not only are you making less, but you can't qualify for insurance. You can't qualify for the benefits that you get as a union member. And so they just keep pushing aside all of us older character actors, and we get less funding, we get less support, we get less money. I lost my health insurance years ago because I can't make the minimums that they require, and it's sad. And it's what's going on in the world today. There's an epidemic of corporate greed. There's crushing all of us, and they just shot that CEO of the healthcare industry and killed him. And I bought these glasses 2 weeks ago. Right, I needed new glasses. I needed progressives because I can't see the music on the stand anymore. How much do you think the copay with insurance costs for these glasses?
$120.
$716 copay with insurance for a pair of glasses. And that's what's happening to all of us. Going back to your question about the industry, everything trickles down, and us as the common man and, just trying to make a living to put things together are getting less and less support from the system, from whatever you want. I mean, check every box is just, but I'm not complaining. I'm not judging. I'm not criticizing. I'm the luckiest man in Bedford Falls. I have the greatest life on earth. I get to swim in the ocean every day. I swim with turtles. I play music. I still get to do movies and television. I get to teach workshops everywhere in the world. I'm the most fortunate guy in the world, so I don't want this to be perceived as bitching or complaining. I always say, you want to hear an actor bitch, give him a job.
Exactly.
That's what we do. We bitch about working. We bitch about not working. It just goes on.
You bitch about crafty. You bitch about crafty.
I gave up bitching a long time
food.
ago, man. I am the luckiest guy on earth. Thank God. I'll drink to that.
I have one final question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Someone comes up to you and they say, Mark, I want to be an actor. I want to do improv. I want to move to Hollywood. What do you tell them? What's the advice you would give them?
Just get up on stage and act. Go to your local theater, take workshops. Do it. Just do it, right? You have a phone. You can make a movie on your phone now. There's all YouTube. YouTube has everything. You can learn how to do everything and anything on YouTube, but you need the experience. You have to, it's just like being an actor is no different than wanting to play piano or learning to paint or learning ballet or any art form. It's like going to the gym and building muscle. You got to work out, man. And you can't buy a membership to the gym and bench press 400 pounds. You have to start and join the gym and start with 1 pound weights and work your way up to 5 pound and 10 pound until you reach your goal. And your goal could take anywhere from 2 months to 20 years. You know, they always say an overnight success is 10 years. It's true. But you just have to work your craft. You have to be passionate about it. You have to practice every day, like being a musician. I just got done practicing my tuba before we did this interview. And it's like any other art form. You want to paint, just pick up a paintbrush and start painting. But you got to do it every day and take your craft as serious as you would any other occupation, whether it be a brain surgeon or a cement worker. You got to take your occupation seriously. People just want a paycheck nowadays, you know? There's a real sense of entitlement with the internet and cell phones and people being able to find like-minded individuals and any chat group. You really lost track of checks and balances of keeping yourself accountable, right? I think there's a lack of accountability in the world today. I function much better as a man when I'm being held accountable by other men, and I get the honor and privilege of holding other men accountable. I belong to an organization called Mankind Project here on Maui, and for years before I left Los Angeles, I was in another men's organization called Sterling Men's Organization, MDI, Mentor, Discover, Inspire. And so I sit in a circle of men every week. Every Tuesday night, I sit in a circle of men and I declare whatever I want to be held accountable for, whether I want to practice tuba more, I want to swim more, I want to exercise, I want to be a better spouse, I want to stop swearing. For me, I'm doing dry January. I'm 15 days into not drinking. And I have to show up next week and sit in the circle of these men and say whether I accomplished what I want to be held accountable for or not. And they hold me accountable, and I get the honor and privilege of holding them accountable. And so my point is this: there's a huge lack of accountability and integrity in the world today, whether it's politics or corporate greed, or, you know, there's people fucking looting in these fires. What the fuck is wrong? What are you thinking? And again, I just want to send out prayers and thinking about all of my friends and people I know and people I don't know in Los Angeles who are suffering through these very challenging times. This too shall pass. Just be patient. You know, what I teach all my students is get out of your own way, eliminate self. Let it happen to you instead of you working so hard to make it happen. And again, I just want to end with this one pillar. Figure out what's working and do more of it instead of trying to change and fix what's wrong. How do you know the difference? One makes you smile and one doesn't. We're all born with an internal mechanism that tells us what's working in our lives. So figure out what makes you smile and do more of it, even in the most tragic of circumstances. So God bless everybody in Los Angeles. Thank you so much for having me on today, my friend. It's good to see you again. And, I'll leave it at that.
How can people find out about your workshops? How can people find Mark Beltzman? Is there a website? What do you have?
It's called markbeltzman.com.
Okay.
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram. I post all that stuff there. But yeah, I have a website, markbeltzman.com, BELTZMAN. And everything I do is posted on there. The concerts at the Maui Pops Orchestra and all my classes and workshops and everything else I'm up to.
So people look up markbeltzman.com. And if you're going to Maui, see if he's going to play the tuba and you can go see him.
Yeah. Look on the website.
Maybe.
Absolutely.
Look on the website. Awesome. Exactly. And people, you can go to YouTube. First of all, I want to thank Jimmy Coran from Trainwreck, Comedy Trainwreck. He produces a show. He's got a great, helps out a lot of Philadelphia comics.
Feel better. I know you're not feeling well, man. Thanks a lot for showing up, buddy.
And check out Jimmy and check out Comedy Trainwreck. It's got great shows with Coleman Green, Corey Alexander, John Kensel, Julia Scotti. There's a bunch of them. Go to YouTube, watch my past shows. While on YouTube, also look up the Coop thing. That's my weekly business YouTube show. I have 3 local business people. We do a seminar about networking, about motivation and things like that. It's great. Go to coopertalk.net, which Mark has been on twice. I have 1,035 episodes. I recently posted Matt Servito, who is Agent Harris in The Sopranos. So that's about it. And if you're in South Jersey, go to Laurel Lanes and Splits Bar and Grill. You might see me there. I have every first Wednesday of the month. It's Cocktails with Cooper. We get about 70 like-minded individuals who want to help each other out in the business world. So please check it out. Check out Mark Beltzman. I'm Steve Cooper, and I'll talk to you all next week. Have a good one.
Cooper Talk. Aloha, brother.
Coops Comedy Corner.